What fetish did your ex have that did absolutely nothing for you? I once had a guy that asked me to wear my work uniform. I worked at McDonald's at the time. Back when we wore clunky polyester. Edit. Don't be up in my DMs about this anymore. I'm not gonna be McLovin on you. Go to horny jail. Edit X2. Thank you for the gold. Just like golden fries. And other things. She liked to baba talk to my D and blow on it while never on our whole relationship jacking me off or giving me head. IDK if that was her kink, but yeah. It's not a turn on when someone starts talking to my D and never actually does anything with it, lol. My ex would always painfully squeeze my nuts right after a blowjob. When I screamed she would just look at me and say you're welcome. She thought she was being kinky. All it did was give me an irrational fear of getting a BJ ever again. Edit. Wow. I did not expect anyone to read this. Thank you everyone for the upvotes. Edit X2. For those wondering why I didn't tell her to stop. I did tell her. Several times. But she refused to listen because she thought it was hot. She was legit crazy. When I finally broke up with her she got so upset that she threw up. Started banging her head against the wall. And started clawing at her arms until they bled. She would absolutely quiver about having her eyes licked. I didn't know that oculolinctus was a thing until I dated her. My wife is into tentacle hentai. It's not really my thing but I love her so I put on the squid monster costume. She wanted to be woken up with sex, but it did nothing for me because she always woke up first. I once dated a guy that told me he had a thing for waterboarding, as in, he had waterboarded his exes, with their consent. That's a nope from me, bruh. Being throat-bucked until I vomited. Edit. I consented 100%. This is not a story of abuse lol, we just discovered he had a vomit fetish. She wanted me to slap her during sex. I just wasn't down for it. She liked being choked too. I did on occasion. But I just didn't feel comfortable doing. One time she wanted me to hold a knife to her throat. I definitely wasn't going to do that one. He absolutely loved it when people washed dishes. I wish I was kidding. But it got him sprung to watch me do dishes. He also worked in a dish room at a local college, which was uncomfortable. One of my exes liked me to slap and tug on his balls. It didn't do much for me and honestly for the first 6 months I was too afraid to do much to them. He liked the idea of fooling around in public and almost getting caught. I like being in my apartment or hotels or places that it's totally normal and acceptable to bang. The anxiety of almost getting caught was a turn off to me. Bro, my ex was wild. I remember one time she was on top. She liked being choked and hit. I didn't. She was on top. She blasted me with a hard backhand slap to the face when she was riding me, getting too into it. She ended up being the craziest, most manipulative, life-destroying girl ever. She ruined my life in a way. Sex was fire though when she wasn't throwing hands. I was eating her ass because I thought she liked. She was letting me eat her ass because she thought I liked it. Actually took like 2 years to figure out. Since I'm a teacher they like to act like a naughty student who needed to be punished. You probably don't realize how gross and duck that is as an actual teacher who works with teenagers daily. I hate when any of my SOs try to super sexualize my career. Cossacks. I drive a tiny smart car. Meanwhile, everyone with weird fetish is just scrolling to see if they get called out. A guy I dated had a foot fetish. He was obsessed with my feet. He bought me socks and would want me to text him what shoes I was wearing and such. I take good care of my feet so I could understand the like. At first, I found it interesting as I hadn't dated anyone with this fetish. I let him lick and suck my toes a few times, seeing if I liked it. It tickled. Did not find it sexy. That's when I decided, not for me. Really nice guy. A fetish for black women. I'm a black woman so I guess it worked for me in the beginning until I found out mans would try to flirt with every black woman he met on the internet. My ex had a fetish for calling me mommy but it made me super uncomfortable and was a factor in our breakup. Tearing up her clothes. Forcefully hold her down bent over or chokehold and explain to her how lucky she was to receive my seed. It grows stale after a while. Ex used to really get off on me ducking other girls. She worked away a lot, so when she came back she'd ride the duck out of me if she smelled a woman's perfume on my clothes or found some panties that weren't hers. She had me duck her best friend. And I'm not going to lie and say sex wasn't great, but it was super weird. We dated for a few months after the best friend duck, but she broke up with me because she found out I had been buying thongs and perfume, so I didn't have to cheat on her. Edit. People saying it wasn't cheating because she's a Korean. Yeah, you're 100% right. I was into it. Just not all the time like she was. We talked about limits and lifestyle etc. Which is how she found out about the thongs and perfume. Glad you all got some enjoyment out of this. I had this girlfriend for about 5 or 6 months, and when it finally came down to it to hop in the bedroom, she did something absolutely crazy, in my mind at least. Sorry to other people that are into this kind of thing. It was in the middle of foreplay and she was about to get on top of me, and she reaches over into the nightstand by the bed and pulls out a loaded gun and told me to put it against her head while she rode me. I've never noped the duck out quicker in my life. Just lying there like a starfish. Telling me mid-orgasm that she wants to duck my best friend and that was all she wanted. And she thought about him while having sex with me. Then she succeeded and I lost 2 people who were toxic in my life, and I have never been better. She had a fetish for blood. No joke. She gets turned on at the sight of blood. One time I badly scraped my knee. Told her about it and she asked me to send a pic. The next reply, she said she was soaking wet. Good thing I broke up with her before we could have a sex. I don't want to be excreting both blood and semen at the same time. My girlfriend had a schoolgirl fetish, but I was never comfortable in the dress. Public sex and gangbang. Both of these are so humiliating for me, and just the fact that he would sometimes try to convince me to have a sex in a very public place or have foursomes with only men was gross and scary. Glad this is over. The night before we were talking about sex and fetishes. We decided that the next day we'd have a sex with whatever fetish she has. I always try something once and wanted to try her fetish, which she said was a surprise. The next day I closed the door and she immediately pulled a diaper out of her bag. After diapering my 23-year-old girlfriend, we started watching a movie. Don't get me wrong, it was kinda cute. I guess I understand the innocence and feeling of being young again. But halfway through the movie she took my hand and put it to her diaper and started ducking pissing. I was kinda in shock. But I wasn't disgusted or anything. Then she started getting frisky. I said, "Aren't you going to take that off?" And she said, "No, I want you to duck me while I'm wearing it." TLDR. XGF had a diaper fetish and wanted me to duck her while she wore a very messy diaper. Me and my boyfriend love each other very much, which means I will squish his head between my thighs for him and he will piss for me. God, why am I sharing this with people on Reddit? Biting. Normally I am more than happy with that, but he would do so unexpectedly, no warning, and hard enough that it would bruise or break skin. Oh, and he would do like a shark, shaking his head back and forth hard, and in usually the most sensitive places. That takes the fun out of it and set me on edge so much that I couldn't get off because I was always ready for the next bite. I had an ex-FWB who got really turned on by being vomited on during blowjobs. It's so messy, and also I gotta say personally, throwing up doesn't ever get me in the mood for anything but a shower and some mouthwash. My ex had a mud fetish. Like, when he was younger would go into like a bog and have a sex with the mud. Where we lived, we didn't have any bogs as adults, so he made enough chocolate pudding to fill the tub. He had me lay in the tub while he poured the pudding all over me and filled the tub almost all the way up. He then got on top of me and we had sex. It wasn't bad really. The cleanup was a nightmare, but the problem was I ended up getting a UTI from it, so I didn't let him do it again after that. Teenagers. He was middle-aged. Calling him daddy while he called me a slut. I was never comfortable with it. I know some people are into this, and I'm not judging, but I was incredibly young and naive and just not into it. Also, he got turned on when I cried, so you guys can figure out how that would be a problem. Edited to add, I totally understand comfort boners. Like if I'm feeling vulnerable and opening up to a guy while cuddling, I can totally understand a boner. But this guy admitted that me crying was a turn on, and it got to the point that he started fights so that I would cry. I looked through the comments but didn't find this already mentioned. I'm surprised. My ex and I had a horrible sex life, and at the end we slept in different rooms and didn't have intercourse for over a year before I finally moved out. Back when he tried to have a sex with me, it never lasted long and he wasn't interested in pleasing me. What did he want? He wanted me to be asleep, not move, unconscious. He encouraged me to take drugs or drink so I would go to sleep and then he could do me or jerk it. Whatever. It's gross and weird for me. And it's not something I'm down for, sorry. There is literally no pleasure in someone raping your sleeping body. I have a suspicion he was also trying to get me pregnant, but I don't know if that was a fetish or him trying to trap me into a dying relationship. Edit, since there are a lot of comments about consent, I don't want to kink shame. I like a good kinky sex life. What my ex was doing was not the same thing as a SSC or even rack partner or relationship. He was just an abusive dude looking to take advantage of someone. He used drugs to muddle my mind and keep me confused. Seek help. Never feel trapped. Be well informed and stay sane. I once dated a guy that wouldn't let me make a sound. We duck in silence. One ex was really into the idea of being slapped hard, being forced to do anal, hair pulled, etc. Just really rough stuff. Like, when I'd try to be a gentleman about anal, lube, take it slow, wait for her cues, she'd be like, duck that. She wanted to ram it in there fast and hard and force her to take it while she screamed and cried. As a porn fantasy, okay, it's kind of dark and disturbing, but it's fantasy. In real life, it's horrifying. I did it for her and it was good. I finished and all. For a while anyways. Eventually it really ducked me up mentally and emotionally. She'd tell me not to do it anymore, but then beg me. She also wanted me to choke her unconscious and then duck her. I tried to do that too, but I could never go through with it. She'd always be disappointed when I couldn't do it. She had a heart condition too, so I was really ducking, nervous about accidentally killing her. Around that time, I started to learn that limits were not just for submissives, but also for dominants. To this day, it still really messes me up. My wife and I began our relationship with kink, though definitely not as severe, but it just kept reminding me of my ex's violent desires and I just don't want to feel that anymore. Always trust your own personal boundaries, people. She was really into gay porn, like, to the point of running a Tumblr blog about gay hentai when such content was allowed on there. She had once expressed a desire to see me either duck a guy in the ass or be ducked in the ass by a guy for her enjoyment. So I guess she was technically a coquette. Lol, just realizing that now. Made myself laugh. She loved to be spanked over my knee while she orgasmed. Was okay. Didn't know any other women into that. Humiliating me every chance she got. She always wanted to tickle my nuts with a feather. So be it if it helped her get in the mood. But for me, using the entire chicken was much more exciting. Public sex. I'm very open-minded, but I don't agree with possibly involving non-consenting parties in your sex life. I indulged him a couple of times when there was absolutely no chance of getting caught, but it did nothing for me. He also chucked a hissy fit when I didn't want to go to a sex club. When he finally wore me down, he ended up chickening out. So glad that's over. She was really into older men, like 40-50. We were 20. They liked me. Some weird it, honestly. Wanting me to pretend I wasn't enjoying myself so he could be the one to teach me to enjoy sex. Ick. Edited to clarify, this was not a roleplay thing. He fetishized good, pure women. He was disappointed when he found out I was comfortable with sex and wanted me to pretend I wasn't to soothe his ego. Ex-husband, but sex on him. He also wanted me to eat his arsehole. Dart, no thanks. He was into swinging, but after I tried it once, I could not fathom doing it again. He also suggested having his ex-wife join us for sex. Kept on bringing it up now and then. Of course it put a damper on our sex life. She was into cucking. Never tried it, which ended the relationship. She wanted to it on me. It's kinda sexy, I guess, when you're horny, but after you orgasm you suddenly realize, OMG, I've got it on me. And it's just so gross. She loved using huge dildos. Not my thing. Just made it so hard for me to walk the next day. He liked to be whipped on the back, chest and D with a metal chain. He also had a huge fetish for Japanese schoolgirls. specifically to be dominated by them and wanted to be called sensei. I just want to clarify that it wasn't a good healthy relationship by any means. He was emotionally abusive and I only went along with this stuff because I was a naive 16-year-old. I met him when I was 14 and he was 4 years older than me, so I wasn't really clued in as to what healthy relationships were supposed to be like. I had a woman just stare at me the whole time. Don't get me wrong, I like some eye contact here and there. Makes it a bit erotic. But the whole time. The whole 2.5 minutes. Not that short, but seriously. The entire time we would have sex she would stare into my soul like she lost her earring in my brain. My ex wanted me to starfish. For those that don't know what sex move that is, it's when a woman lays prone and doesn't make any noise or movement during sexual happy fun times. I tried spicing it up and calling it the doll, but honestly it was so boring and difficult. I like getting into it, touching and kissing my partner, and I can get vocal when I'm enjoying myself, but I felt pressure to tone it down to subarctic levels and that really turned me off. Bonus. He would also ask me to stick my tongue out like the girls in hentai videos. Needless to say, he's seeing a lot less of my tongue these days. Threesomes, any form of group sex. He was way into it and tried convincing me every 2-3 weeks with varying parties. I always said no, because it takes a lot for me to trust someone to have sex with them, and being as anxious and insecure at my body as I am, getting another party involved was a no-go. The worst was while we were having sex he asked me, do you fantasize about an entire room of men doing whatever they want with you? And I quietly went no. My ex-fiance registered sign had a giant fetish. Literally. He fetishized giants. He refused to ever be on top. Had me stand on the bed and walk around so I looked extra tall. And asked me to tell him how small and puny he was and how big and giant I was while I rode him. He liked it when I said I was taller than buildings and trees. Like hundreds of feet tall. He even would ask me to say fee fi fo fum like the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk. I hated all of it, but it was the only way he wanted to have sex, so I put up with it for 3 years. Definitely super glad I don't have to do it for the rest of my life. Ex was a bloodhound. I wouldn't have minded so much, but he literally didn't tell me until we were in the middle of things. Hair pulling. I suffer regular migraines, so my head can be really sensitive. She kept trying to do it even though I told her it hurt a lot and ruined the mood for me. Being told he had a small D. My ex happened to have a fetish for transformation. Primarily weird ones though. Not like werewolves or anything, but people turning into cars and it like that. Definitely not something that you can do anything with. One of my exes was into that daddy dom stuff. It did nothing for me, but I didn't mind humoring it. He was into biting necks and sucking blood like a vampire. Yeah. No. Once had a guy who couldn't get it up unless I farted in his face. One of my exes was very into phonetics, and aside from that not being a turn on for me, she was really bad at it. He wanted to watch me eat and get fat. He would take me out to eat and just stare at me. He would order me extra food to go and I would eat it in bed before we ducked. Then he would grab at my thighs, my boobs and my stomach. Super uncomfortable all around. Had a big D though. Edit. Added clarification. He liked to borrow my panties and wear them himself. Thongs string on a man just isn't attractive to me. Maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite cause men's boxers are super comfy and I've borrowed some from previous partners. Scrolling through this comment section makes me wonder if I'm really kinky or if a lot of redditors are just vanilla as hell. Biting. Like damn girl. Those things are attached. He wanted to pee over me. That was the moment I wasn't attracted to him anymore, lol. She had major daddy issues and therefore called me daddy during sex. I guess some people like it, but hell nah. A girl I dated wouldn't stop asking me to send her D pics. Her and I literally started dating the day before and she's already asking for nudes. Not only that, she asked me to ask a couple twin brothers at my school for their nudes so I can send them to her so she can send videos of her using them to me to send back to them. Dodge an explosive round bullet if you ask me.